The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of bruised purple as Ellie Harper gripped the steering wheel of her beat-up Toyota Corolla. She'd been driving for 6 hours straight, the hum of the engine her only solace after a messy breakup had sent her fleeing Chicago. Her destination, a friend's cabin in northern Minnesota, a place to reset. The map app on her phone had glitched an hour ago, leaving her with a paper atlas she'd found in the glove box, its pages yellowed and curling. Beside her, in the passenger seat, sat her dog, Milo, a scruffy mutt with one ear perpetually cocked. He'd been whining softly for the last 20 miles, his nose pressed against the window. "Almost there, buddy," Ellie muttered, though she wasn't sure. The road, Highway 17, according to the atlas, stretched endlessly through dense pine forest, the kind that swallowed light and sound. No cars had passed her in over an hour. A sign flickered in her headlights, "Whispering Mile, one you or me." She frowned. The name wasn't on the map, but a turnoff sounded promising. Maybe a gas station or a diner. Her tank was half full, but her stomach growled and Milo needed a break. She flicked on her high beams, the light catching on gnarled branches that seemed to lean over the road like skeletal hands. The turn came abruptly, a narrow gravel path veering right. A rusted signpost read, "Whispering Mile" in faded letters, an arrow pointing down the lane. Ellie hesitated, then turned. "Let's see what's here," she said to Milo, who whimpered in response. The gravel crunched under her tires as the forest thickened, the path winding deeper until the highway disappeared from her rearview mirror. After a mile, the trees parted, revealing a cluster of buildings bathed in the dim glow of a single street lamp. It wasn't much. A gas station with one pump, a diner with a flickering open sign, and a handful of squat houses, their windows dark. The air felt still, heavy, like the town was holding its breath. Ellie pulled into the gas station lot, the pump ancient and streaked with rust. She stepped out, stretching her legs, and let Milo hop down. He sniffed the ground, then froze, ears flat against his head. "What's wrong?" she asked, but he only growled low in his throat. The diner's door creaked open, and a man stepped out, tall, gaunt, with a face like weathered leather. He wore a flannel shirt and a trucker hat pulled low over his eyes. "Evening," he called, his voice raspy. "You lost?" "Just passing through," Ellie said, forcing a smile. "Thought I'd grab some food." He nodded slowly. "Diner's got coffee and pie. Best in the county." His eyes lingered on Milo, who bared his teeth. "Dog don't like me much." "He's just tired," Ellie said, clipping Milo's leash. She glanced at the gas pump. "This work?" "Sure does. Fill up after you eat. Name's Cal, by the way." He tipped his hat and shuffled back toward the diner. Inside, the diner smelled of grease and something faintly sour. A lone waitress, pale, with stringy hair, stood behind the counter, wiping it with a rag. She didn't look up as Ellie slid into a booth, Milo curling up at her feet. The menu was a single laminated sheet. Coffee, pie, burgers. Ellie ordered a coffee and an apple pie, her eyes drifting to the window. Outside, the street lamp buzzed, casting long shadows that seemed to shift when she wasn't looking. Cal sat at the counter, sipping from a chipped mug. "Where you headed?" he asked, not turning around. "Up north." "Friend's cabin," Ellie said. The waitress set down her coal, fee, the liquid black and steaming. Ellie took a sip. It was bitter, almost metallic. "Roads get tricky up here," Cal said. "Whispering Mile's a funny place. Folks come through, but they don't always leave." Ellie laughed nervously. "Sounds like a ghost story." He turned then, his eyes glinting under the hat. "Ain't a story." The pie arrived, its crust flaky, but the filling cold and oddly gritty. Ellie ate half before pushing it away. Milo hadn't touched the water she'd poured into a bowl for him. He just stared at the door, hackles raised. The waitress hummed a tuneless song, her voice barely audible over the hum of the fluorescent lights. Ellie paid with a crumpled 10, eager to leave. "Let's go, Milo," she said. But as she stood, the lights flickered, and a low whisper filled the room. Not words, just a soft, insistent murmur, like wind through dry leaves. She froze. "Did you hear that?" Cal tilted his head. "Hear what?" The waitress stopped humming, her rag still in hand. "It's the mile," she said, her voice flat. "Talks to some folks." Ellie's skin prickled. "I'm just gonna fill up and go." Outside, the air was colder, the whisper louder now, weaving through the trees. She hurried to the pump, shoving the nozzle into her tank. The numbers on the dial spun, but the gauge in her car didn't move. "Come on," she muttered, yanking the nozzle out. Gasoline dripped onto the ground, dark and thick like oil. Milo barked, sharp and urgent, his eyes fixed on the forest. Ellie followed his gaze. Something moved between the trees, a shape too tall, too thin to be human. The whisper grew into a chorus, voices overlapping, calling her name.
"Ellie, Ellie, stay."
She scooped Milo up and bolted for the car, slamming the door. The engine sputtered but caught, and she peeled out of the lot, gravel spraying. The diner's open sign blinked out as she passed. The gravel path stretched on, the forest closing in tighter. Ellie's headlights barely pierced the dark, and the whispering followed, seeping through the windows. She glanced at the atlas. Highway 17 should have been a mile back, but the road showed no signs of ending. The dashboard clock read 11:47 p.m., then flickered to 11:46, then 11:47 again. Milo whimpered, pressing against her side. "We're okay," she lied, her hands trembling on the wheel. A sign appeared ahead. "Whispering Mile. War me." Her stomach dropped. She'd passed that sign already. Hours ago. She floored it, the car rattling as the path looped back to the town. The gas station, the diner, the dark houses, they reappeared, unchanged. Cal stood by the pump, waving slowly. The waitress watched from the diner window, her rag dripping something red. Ellie swerved, aiming for the forest, but the road curved back, forcing her into the loop. The whispers grew deafening, a cacophony of voices begging, threatening, pleading. "Stay with us. You're ours." The fuel gauge dropped to empty, though she hadn't driven far. The engine coughed, then died, rolling to a stop in front of the diner. The street lamp buzzed overhead and Cal approached, his shadow stretching impossibly long. "Should have stayed for pie," he said, his grin showing too many teeth. Ellie locked the doors, clutching Milo as the whispers clawed at her mind. Shadows pressed against the windows, tall, eyeless figures with limbs like twisted branches. The car rocked, glass cracking under unseen hands. She fumbled for her phone, dead. The atlas lay open on the seat, but the page for Highway 17 was blank, replaced by a single word scrawled in red, whispering. The door handle rattled. Milo lunged, barking, as the lock clicked open. Ellie screamed, kicking at the door, but Cal's hand, cold, clammy, grabbed her wrist. "Miles got you now," he rasped, pulling her out. The last thing she saw was Milo's leash slipping from her grasp as the shadows swallowed her. The Corolla sat empty by morning, rust creeping over its hood, as if it had been there for years. The whispers faded, waiting for the next traveler to take the turn.